Hi everyone, it's 2024. It's a brand new season, season 2 of the Driving Talk podcast powered by Icon with myself, Robert Lewis, Paul Harvey and Max Coates. Let's get into it. Okay, so it's just us three here today. We've got myself, Robert Lewis, Paul Harvey, and our resident professional racing driver extraordinaire, Max Coates, who I can assure you doesn't live in Mexico. Or is that true? Do you live in Mexico or not, Max, or is it still North Yorkshire?
I went on holiday to Mexico. I bought a house in North Yorkshire. I'm a Yorkshire lad through and through, and I'm not moving away from Yorkshire. So, yeah, still got a long way to drive to pretty much any track that isn't Croft. And, yeah, I'm in my new house and very, very happy with it.
Well, it's the start of a new year, so I guess the first we've cleared the Mexico thing out of the way. The other thing we kind of need to come across: how was Christmas and New Year for you guys?
It was good for me. So me and girlfriend Emily went on holiday to Mexico, which is where the whole confusion rocked up. So my Christmas break really started at the end of November, and it was 2023 was probably my busiest ever year. Seemed to be on the road quite a lot, tracks every other day, if not more, and so things were pretty busy up to the back end of last year, and then we had a 10 days away in Mexico, came back from there, moved house, got it sorted out for Christmas. I had loads of people over Christmas, and then New Year, which brought on my 30th. 2024 isn't just a new year for me; it's a new decade of the life, and I feel like a bit of a new chapter, really. So, yeah, Christmas and New Year has been good, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the 30s has to bring.
Aches and pains, I think.
No, hopefully not.
You should try being 50, Max. I mean, you'll say, new decade, turning 30. I'll be 51 in 2 weeks' time.
Right. How's the 50s? What have I got to look forward to?
Aches and pains, definitely.
Aches and pains.
It's okay to be grumpy because everyone expects it. And I hope to play up to that for the next 20, 30 years at least.
Okay.
You can say, it wasn't like that in my day, and everything else that comes with it. And you can pretend to be the voice of wisdom and reason and use all of your years of experience, but the reality is, bugger all anyway. So you could just style it out better.
That doesn't sound any different to me in my 30s.
No, that's exactly. It's no different. It just hurts more when you wake up.
Oh dear.
Well, that's one way to kind of start things. And obviously, we're in the off season, but it's probably been the busiest it's ever been out there. The motorsport and the motoring world is changing. I think predominantly we'll be covering the motorsport side of things today. One of the big sort of news items on the list that's not really been a news item from the team as such. There was a lot of rumour, a lot of conjecture, but it does look like we are no longer going to be seeing Team Hard in the British Touring Car Championship. They ran a 6-car team last year, and we sadly see the demise of Team Hard. Your thoughts on it, gents?
I'll let you go first, Paul. I mean, you're the business expert within our little trio. So
I don't know about expert, but light on that. I don't know about expert, but in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, isn't he? So you just have to know a little bit more than others. I mean, I could talk to you in sort of broad terms from a business perspective, and also from my experience in and around the motorsport side. Motorsport is an expensive business. It's a very cash-hungry business. There isn't any cheap motorsport, even at very basic club-level racing, and certainly at the level that organisation has been operating for the period of time that it has done, it's not cheap to do that. It requires hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds. And the concept...
To clarify, to run 6 touring cars should cost well in excess of £1 million.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And at a basic level, it's very cash hungry. You've always got money going out. And that's why to some degree, you could consider is BTCC, almost a pay to drive type series, but then many are. You've got to bring sponsorship or some funding with you. And the concept was to allow people that didn't necessarily have massive budgets and sponsors to drive in BTCC. I think that's how it sets out. But inevitably, if you've got a lot of cash going out and not a lot of cash coming in, you're going to catch a cold. And there's ways of financial engineering to sort of delay the inevitable. There's all sorts of mechanisms that people would have used in all businesses. This is not just talking about Team Hard specifically, where you can pre-pack your business and clear some of your debt and start again and rebrand, and HMRC maybe, and some of your creditors might suffer from that. You can only do that to a certain degree, and at some point it becomes in the public interest for HMRC to investigate on behalf of the welfare of the public. And when they start intervening, that's it. It's all over. And it should never happen, because people, as a director, you have a legal responsibility to operate in a profitable manner, any business that's not motorsport specific. And you have a moral obligation that if you know you can't afford to do what you're doing, to not expose other people that may suffer as a result of it. But, it's a really cash-thirsty business, and you can rack up some very big numbers of debt very, very quickly, and they're not easy to get out of at those sort of levels. So, it's not the first motorsport organisation that would have suffered. We've seen it in Formula One at the very pinnacle of the sport. It takes a lot of money, and if you're not able to keep up with that, and the inevitable will catch up with you at some point. And that's the same for any business, cash and overtrading and everything else that goes with it. Cash is king.
Yeah, I mean, Max, I come to you loosely in the knowledge that at some point you've worked with Team Hard, haven't you? So what did you find? Was there any indication for you? I mean, from your personal experience, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't find it massively surprising, but in equal form, it's a shame. I feel sorry for a number of people within it. People who were full-time employed staff and had made careers there. It's a shame that this has happened, but ultimately, I think for people like that, one door closes, another opens, and they'll probably go on to bigger and better things as a result. So I think, certainly some of the people that I knew who were full-time within that organisation have certainly changed roles, gone on to new things, and seem to be, doing okay on the other side. So that's really good to see. But yeah, I ran the Team Hard Clio Cup team in 2019. We had a lot of success. It was my most winningest year. I think that's partly down to how we operated as a team, but also partly down to the number of cars on the grid. It was there was less cars, so there was naturally going to be an uprise in our results, but we still had to go and do that, and we did. So I think to understand how that actually worked that year. So I ran the team alongside my dad. Team Hard provided the truck to us, FOC, which was their part of doing what they do. And for me, the Team Hard ethos has effectively always been to try and support drivers with less funding and get them into a position where they can still go racing at the highest levels. And they have done that. They've done that successfully, in that those drivers have raced at that level over a very long period of time. But whether it has been successful in every level in terms of has it actually paid everybody that it maybe should have paid, that bit is not necessarily there. I mean, aside from that, people within the team were paying me to run the internal operations of it. We brought in driver coaches, setup and data from the best Clio Cup team in Clio Cup history. We had equipment that was bought to run that team, and staff who were paid to come and do different roles within the team. So different areas of that were paying me, and I'm still to be owed money from kind of that team hard enterprise, and I'm one of a great number of people who are in that position. So I think, for me, it's my belief that kind of one situation goes into another where there's we need this to pay that, and then that to pay this, and then it just rolls on in an escalating manner to a point where it's just not able to continue.
And I think the thing about it is, Max, is that no one necessarily sets out to try and not pay people. People don't go to work to do a bad job. People don't run sport, or some people do, because there's some famous cases across the world. But people don't tend to want to do things to hurt people. And the flip side as well is, as much as the money coming in, I've heard lots and lots of stories. Would be the probably disclaimer perspective of companies not fulfilling their obligations under sponsorships, and not paying across their last parts. And I'm not asking you to talk about you, Max, but certainly from a broader perspective, you may have had sponsors that have said, yeah, we're in for the year, and suddenly 3/4 of the way the year through, you're owed 10, 15, 20, 30, 40,000. Again, not specific to you, just as a concept. And you don't see that, but you've already committed to the cost, or may have incurred the cost.
Yeah.
And suddenly the shortfall sits with you.
After.
And in this sort of situation could equally be, you've got to be fair and balanced. We don't know the details. So it's not fair to just necessarily put all the blame at Team Hard. Obviously, we've heard rumours and stories over a prolonged period of years now. Mm-hmm. But it's not automatically just them and the way they've managed their business. There's a lot of moving parts that go into any of this.
Absolutely. I had that in 2020.
And you had the perfect. I used to chat a lot when I was involved with the BRSCC Porsches with Martin Braybrook, who runs Brookspeed. And they ran James Gornall. Jiggy, a lot of our listeners would know him as Jiggy Gornall, who previously raced in touring cars. But at that point, he was racing the Dodge Viper with the Trimite livery in the British GT. And they actually went to the last round as the Trimite Dodge Viper team. But Trimite went bust before the last round, so there was no money at all. And they went to the last round looking to win the British GT Championship with no sponsorship whatsoever. I think Martin Braybrook had to pay a lot of the bills off his own back to get the car there for them to win the British GT Championship. So there are stories up and down the paddocks where that happens in all forms of motorsport. And of course, especially since COVID, you've seen it in football as well. Rugby union certainly going through a bit of a turmoil at the moment in professional terms. Yeah. There's a few clubs. So it's not just segregated to motorsport, but certainly Team Hard was one of the... I wouldn't say the headline makers. It was certainly one of the big stories in the rumour mill in silly season.
Yeah. I've experienced that. I had a sponsor on for 20 grand in 2020, and they pulled out after 5, and it was really difficult to make the rest of that season work. But I was fortunate enough to get some new sponsors back on board and make it through. But I can completely see that when there's that many people and teams and revenue streams through what Team Hard had, you only need one or two of them to break down, and you're suddenly into a lot of problems. So I don't think it was necessarily an intention of we don't set out to pay people, but I think sometimes it was a case of trying to survive without necessarily knowing where that next bit was going to come from. So you mount up in that way, and that was kind of the way that it felt from the internal side when I was there. But in the same breath, I think Tony's vision of what he tried to do with Team Hard was a very similar vision to what I've had in ways that I would like to get a team to run and be at the top of professional motorsport. So I think Tony's idea and ideology of how he tried to put the team together was something that a lot of people would support. Just in practice, it didn't quite work out. So it's a shame that they won't be on the grid, because it's also a massive part of the grid. There's 6 cars is best part of 25% of the grid, and it'd be a very different face of BTCC next year without Team Hard there, and of course all the other support series and various different other places that they operate in. So
and also the opportunities are now gone for drivers. There's now 6 less seats for people to step into BTCC. So they're going to have to think about things differently.
Well, you say about the 6 seats going. I mean, I think 2 of the Cupras have already gone to Restart Racing, have they not? But Taylor's guys have come back with Chris Smiley. They've been running TCR UK. They've now bought 2 of the licenses. They're going back into touring cars, one of them with Chris Smiley. So it looks like they've taken over 2 of the old Team Hard Cupras. Carl Boardley had a license as well. He's just won TCR UK, so maybe he's looking to take a step back in. Will he buy one of I'm pretty sure he maybe owned one of the cars. So
yeah, I'm fairly sure that one of the 6 cars operating as Team Hard the license was owned by Carl. Have a feeling that on some of them, potentially some that were owned by Aidan Moffat Racing were maybe conjoined with somewhere in with what Tony did. I don't fully know, but I don't think Team Hard ever owned 6 TBLs, so they had to get them from some of the other people who own TBLs on the grid. And certainly Aidan and Carl are people who've had a good and strong relationship with Team Hard in the past. So it would make a lot of sense. I mean, there's another number of teams who've increased in their numbers, haven't they? So Accelerate and Alliance Racing have always run 4 cars. West Surrey were at 3 last year, I believe.
4. Well, they had Morgan. No, they had 4 because Hill runs off of WSR,
Yes.
and then you had Morgan, Jelly, and Turkington. So they've always been at 4.
They've been a 4. Speedworks was a 3 last year. That's gone to 4. One Motorsport has always been a 3.
Yep. So they were running the late in the year. I know Will Powell was booted out sort of mid-season. Jade Edwards, Aidan Moffat, and Josh Cook.
Yeah.
So
I guess the weird thing there is obviously Aidan's got 2, and they could go. They're not part of that One Motorsport setup, so that's where you've kind of got that overlapping bit of really it's Aidan and CBM Racing, Carl Boardley, where that kind of the slack of the Team Hard numbers has been made up, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It'll certainly be interesting to see how it comes into the new season. It's a period of anticipation and change. Great end to last year, and everything else that went with it. So, I mean, it's exciting. The touring cars is never dull in any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I think the racing was better last year, all in all, and it's going to be interesting to see how the grid shakes up this year. So, obviously, we've seen Jake's re-signed, so that's good. So, it's his second year in that car. If he can be even more competitive with a year under his belt with the rear-wheel drive and stuff. So, all good.
Well, moving on from the touring car talk a little bit, and something that Max was actually speaking about, the other bit of news that's come in over the winter, which I don't know if you've maybe thinking about buying some cars for this for your Hyro Motorsport marketing team. Max, the Clio Cup has returned. It looks like predominantly run by Finsport, and it's going to be racing under MSV in the UK. So Clio Cup GB returns. Max, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, Clio Cup is something that I've been involved with for many, many years. So I'm quite naturally delighted to see it coming back. I think the idea is that it's going to run as its own headline event. I don't know how that's quite going to work out in terms of what happens. They've got a support race at Fanatec World Challenge round at Brands Hatch, which would be really, really good. As a support race, we're also there with the Brit Car Trophy that weekend, so that'll be good. But I think it works on a number of levels. The one day race meetings, they're going to Anglesey, which I think is really, really cool. So not a lot of big series go to Anglesey, so that is really, really cool to see.
I've got the full calendar here, actually, Max. So if we run through the full calendar, it starts off the opening round Silverstone National Circuit on the 13th of April. That's going to be a very good circuit for it. The slipstreaming, always great in Clio racing. And unfortunately, I can hark back and remember a meeting going into Brooklands where it didn't quite come off for you, did it?
No.
It
It
goes,
makes
I
for
think,
entertaining watching. Less for entertaining crashing from those involved in it.
definitely entertaining watching. I think the Fanatec GT World Challenge meeting you're on about, that's on the 4th of May at Brands Hatch on the Grand
That's
Prix
right,
circuit.
yeah.
That's round 2. Their visit to Anglesey isn't until July, and that's round 3 of the championship.
There's a big break in
Snetterton
the season,
300
actually, there.
in August. It
Yep.
is, yeah. Snetterton in August, Donington Park in September, and they're rounding out the season with a round at Alton Park on the 28th of September, and then Brands Hatch Indy on the 26th of October, which is traditionally around the time where they have the Enduro KA finale and they have the sort of conclusion of the various club championships that MSV provides. So a good mixed bag there. Obviously, a lot of MSV circuits in there. And backing from Michelin this year as well. So they're really, it's really almost going back to its works-backed roots.
Yeah, it's not backed by Renault.
No.
From a marketing standpoint within the UK, but it is backed by Renault Sport, who organised the Renault racing for Renault globally. So that is really, really important. To be honest, from a driver's point of view, as opposed to a marketing point of view, that's the really important thing. Renault have always built very, very good cars, which I can vouch for because we've still got 2 Gen 4 Clios and they're still running very, very well. Renault have always built a good car. They do really, really good support. And I've got no reason to believe that won't continue in this new Clio Cup. There's a few drivers who've, I think, already announced they're doing it. So Ben Jenkins is one. He's run with me in the last year in Brit Car Trophy, and I believe, I want to say, is it Dare Flock, lad from Junior Saloon Cars, was up the front in that. So they've done it with Westbourne. So there's some teams with sort of some Clio history coming back to do it as well. So it's good to see, and I'll be watching it with a lot of interest.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on the Gen 5 car, Max? Have you seen, driven, know of them compared to the 4? Obviously, you're expert in 4, but
seen, haven't driven. From what I understand, they'll be slower than a Gen 4, and that was in part why Renault Clio Cup demised in the UK. I believe the other was mainly because the new director was interested in football rather than motorsport, so he therefore sponsored the Renault Super Sunday or whatever it's called, football thing that happens on a Sunday on Sky. So that's where the funding went. That's why Clio Cup stopped, is what I understand it to be. So, So the other part was that the car was a bit slower. So it's a 1.3 turbo. I can't remember what the power is, but a bit less than our sort of Gen 4 Clios, which are about 250.
Yeah, I think it's about 205 or something. It's not much more than that.
Yeah, so there'll be a great fun car to drive. The problem from the Clio Cup continuing, it got to the end of 2019, which is when Clio Cup stopped in UK in terms of supporting British touring cars. That was the end of the Gen 4 era of cars, and it had to go to Gen 5. And unfortunately, the new cars just weren't. It's very, very rare for a new car to come in and be slower without it being like electric or powered some way different. When it's powered in exactly the same way, and it's like, it's not as good. It's like, why? Well, what's the point? So, but I do think stick shifts sequential will be pretty cool. That's definitely more intuitive for the driver anyway.
Yeah, and there's obviously been a European series running with this car as well, and there was a big end of season sort of pan-European race, which had a massive grid, which probably was slightly flattering to the individual series. But I mean, it's nice to see, as Rob said, nice to see a manufacturer, a new car come back. It's nice to see MSVR or MSVT Racing, I think it is actually, who are got hold of it and want to promote it, and it's good to see some initial interest around it. But same as anything, it just takes some time to build that momentum, see how it plays out. But it looks like a really interesting series, and one that people will be pleased to see back on taking a series space, whereas some of the other times have been dilution of other stuff that's out there. This is genuine, unique, standalone, one make. It has all the credentials and the probability to be very successful.
Yeah, definitely. And that end of season pan-European event that you said, that is brilliant. We did that in 2018, and it still goes down as one of the best events I've ever raced in. So it's really, really super to have Renault's involvement, and that sort of thing is a Renault Sport global type event. Run by the guys that run Renault Sport in France, and involvement like that is the sort of thing that brings this level of championship to a really high level, and something that's not necessarily seen really by a lot of other manufacturers anywhere. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where it goes, really.
And I assume it's under the Alpine banner now. Renault Sport is no more, so it must be
it is,
Alpine.
Yeah, the invoices have an Alpine badge on as well as a Renault one. So yeah, it's a bit of both.
It's still right. We'll still call it Renault Sport. It's a Renault, it's a Clio. It's always going to be a Renault. You can change the badge, but it's always going to be a Renault Clio. Simple as.
It's a Renault Clio. It's never going to be called an Alpine Clio, is it?
No, it just doesn't sort of ring off the tongue as much. Now, we were talking obviously just before we started recording this podcast, Max, and I think you're going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works because you've been doing a bit of sleuthing in the GT world. What's going on?
Yeah, so I think probably the thing that set it all off really is the Ford Mustang GT3 coming in as a sort of factory driver lineup to a number of different programs around the world, mainly GT World Challenge, IMSA, and World Endurance. But it's sort of set off a bit of a ricochet, I think, in terms of new drivers being announced onto different manufacturer platforms, and quite a few changes. So the one when it sort of really started to catch my eyes is people who've been on board with certain manufacturers swapping for a long time. So Ford's new driver is Ben Barker, fella who was in Porsche Carrera Cup for a number of years. Very, very good driver. Very talented lad.
And he was McLaren's main man for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's been big time Porsche guy. Has raced in World Endurance in the Gulf Porsches. So yeah, people like him have been big brand ambassadors for other places. Dennis Olsen, Andy Prio, and Fred Vervish. I'm not really sure of his name, but they're people who've joined that program. But Corvette's lineup was Charlie Eastwood, who was definitely big drive. I can't quite remember where he was before. I think that's Earl Bamber in there as well, Danny Juncadella. So there's some really top names come into different manufacturers. And it's just a bit of a shake-up. So I don't think I've ever seen, there's probably about a period of a week where every other post that I'd seen from like a professional GT driver was, I'm really pleased that I've had such a great time with such and such manufacturer for 10 years, but I'm now moving to this place. And then, that seemed to be quite a theme over the course of about a week in December. It's probably last I was on holiday, actually. So sort of, like mid-December, all these switches seem to come around. So, and I think friend of the podcast in David Pittard getting a Works Aston drive is probably for us three, probably the top bit of news from it all. But there's people like DP who've got new factory drives and are full well deserved, really.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he used to live around the corner. If people weren't aware of that, we Letchworth Garden City, massive as we've banded ourselves in a WhatsApp. I mean, he was obviously got a great racing career behind him. He did a day's coaching with me at Bedford in his Lotus, and since then he's taken off. So I obviously taught him a few things that he hadn't picked up through his years and years of professional
Paul.
racing. Yeah. So and then he obviously had massive years at the Nürburgring in the VLN, that's now the NLS series, and then more recently got some factory drives. And it was unfortunate that the drive didn't work out for him in America quite the way that he would have hoped, but just managed to throw in sort of like a 24-hour race win at the Nürburgring in a Ferrari first time out, and then went back and did it again in a Porsche and had a great race at the end of the year. So the guy's clearly talented, and he's put in the hard miles and done all the things you need to do. And it's great to see someone with his talent recognised with a factory drive. And I'd imagine he had a little bit of a link with Aston out in the US, I believe. So hopefully he was in there somewhere helping to pull that kind of deal together. I don't know if I'm being overly optimistic with that, if that's the way that it really works at that echelon, but it's great to see that. And obviously with Le Mans and the hypercars and everything else that's coming along, we're starting to see GTs and Le Mans and everything really come back into something that's competitive, exciting. Aston have announced the Valkyrie as well. Mr. Stroll's obviously got a Formula One driver with Spanish origin at the moment who may well want a little seat in that. That comes live January 25, I believe, into that series at Daytona. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in there. Alex Denning, who you race with, Max, as well, he's doing some stuff with McLaren. He's landed a drive there, and hopefully that continues into this season. I'm not sure exactly what his plans are. You might be better than me, but we've got a little bit of personal interest with some of the characters, but actually that's starting to look like a really appealing competitive race series, and they're doing some great things.
Yeah, I mean, the World Endurance Championship, for me, as a racing fan, I don't have a lot of interest in Formula One these days. I haven't for a few years. But the World Endurance Championship, I think this year could be one of the most exciting championship races, like worldwide championship races, we've seen for a long time. We've now got all these manufacturers involved in, particularly with the hypercar class. We saw Ferrari win Le Mans last year. I mean, Le Mans last year was captivating. We spoke about it in the first episode of the Driving Talk podcast, which kind of dates 6 months ago now. But the World Endurance Championship starting off at Qatar in March, going through Italy, Belgium, Imola, Spa-Francorchamps. You've got the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is round 4 of the championship, and then you've got Sao Paulo, Circuit of the Americas, Fuji, and Bahrain. And the only thing that's wrong with that calendar is the fact that there's not a British round. I think that's the real shame, because moving to David Pittard, it's really fantastic to see someone who I believe is very underrated, certainly from in racing circles. I think you always know that you've got a great driver when they get the famous green Autosport cover when they do something that's absolutely brilliant, and he's very much one of those drivers that I can see being one of this country's true GT racing greats. And he started already, especially with that first win for Ferrari at the Nürburgring with the new Ferrari car last year. And I truly believe this year he's going to come on to great things with Aston Martin.
Yeah, and I think just as importantly with that, I don't, we're not best mates, and I don't spend every weekend with him, but he's a really nice guy from what I know, and it's nice to see one of the nice guys doing well. He's always had lots of time. I message him, he messages back. He's genuinely a nice guy, and I think that it's nice to see the nice guys doing well and having the opportunity. You don't just have to be a twat to be able to succeed at elite level sport. So, so fair play to him, and he deserves everything that's coming for him. But I think I don't know why it feels relatable. I mean, I still like F1, and I think as the field tightens up, it will become more interesting again. I don't love it like I used to. But I don't know. GTs just seem more relatable, but absolutely they're not relatable, because you've got otherworldly talents behind the wheels, and it's millions and millions of pounds to drive it. So I don't know why I feel that it's more relatable. But obviously the car's a bit more familiar to what we would see on the road and everything else at certain levels. But yeah, I mean, it's just looks like it's going to be interesting racing. I think anything that's close, interesting racing, manufacturer support, it's always going to be of interest.
I think it's more relatable because you actually know people who are doing it, and like you know, I don't know Lewis Hamilton, but I do know David Pittard. I don't speak, like you say, don't speak to him every day, don't see him every weekend, but when I do speak to him, he goes, "Hi Max, how you doing?" Lewis Hamilton doesn't do that. George Russell doesn't do that. You know, Lando doesn't do that. I know Lando better than I know the rest of them, but like, you know, that I think that interaction, even though there's people who are actually in works drives who you sort of have seen around the sort of our top level paddocks over the course of time. I know Lando did a year in, a year here. George Russell was on Formula 4 or F3 or something on his way up, but I just don't feel like you get the same level of interaction with people in a Formula drive as you do in either GT or touring car type stuff. It just doesn't happen for whatever reason. But I mean, that's why.
Also, the paddock's more open, isn't it? I mean, you can get access to people in the paddocks, as Rob did when he saw some of his legends in the touring car. Legends paddock.
Super Touring, yeah,
Super Touring. So it's just more accessible. It's less elite. Yeah. I understand why Formula One has chosen that path, etc., etc. But yeah, I mean, it does. But just as interesting is that the racing still seems exciting. Le Mans is still Le Mans and has all of the magic and mystery and everything that went with that, including last year with the Ferrari winning first time out. You've got some much more interesting machinery coming in. You know, they're doing well in terms of providing a product that people want to watch, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
And it's not a foregone conclusion when the green light goes out. You know, it's
not.
You know, and that's. I think we can probably all agree it wasn't just a case of. Drive to Survive piquing people's interest when Lewis and Max Verstappen had that proper ding-dong battle for the championship. Everybody who went, "I'm not really bothered about Formula One," went, "This is bloody awesome. Like, I want to watch this. I'm interested in it. It's good fun." But like, it's not like that. It's not really that interesting, is it? And that's what sport's all about in every other thing. You know, if Man City go and win the Premier League by 20 points because they just won every game, then it's not really that interesting. But when there's like two top teams are playing each other and whoever wins the Premier League, then it's interesting, isn't it? And that's the thing is you want that level of competition, and I think that's probably where the top end of GT racing is it is made on a platform that means that everyone's competitive, and that's just so much better for people to watch.
And it means that manufacturers can spend the money and knowing that they can bring a brand new car in, and Ford are putting some serious money into world motorsport in general at the moment. They've done it with the V8 supercars down under, with the Mustang down there. They're now doing it with the GT3. They've released a range of Mustangs that they're doing for world motorsport. And hopefully we'll see them in British GT this year as well.
Can have the engine badge for the Red Bull team moving forwards as well, Ford, aren't they? So, there's a lot of money being thrown at motorsport from them. You're quite right.
Absolutely. And the one thing, just moving away from the motorsport side at the moment, obviously, I keep an eye out on what car trends are doing obviously, I work in the vehicle recycling industry. And we're looking a lot at sustainability and what's going to happen in the future. And Ford were investing hugely on electrification. They were going to put something like 12 billion, well, not huge money for them, but significant enough for the likes of us. They were putting $12 billion into technology in electrification, but now they've postponed it. So it looks like potentially that Ford are going to be doing what Toyota are doing and maybe going down the sustainable fuel or the hydrogen side. And then I saw pictures of the Toyota hydrogen prototype that they want to debut. I think it was possibly at Le Mans or at some point in the World Endurance Championship. So again, that's the other thing. You won't see that in Formula One, but you could potentially see that in the World Endurance Championship while still keeping it. It's something that's kind of maybe simmered over the years particularly while it was being dominated by one manufacturer or two. But I think it's really going to come into its own.
Yeah, no, that is interesting to see. I think you're right. I think sustainable fuels are the way to go rather than electric, and yeah, hopefully more people, more brands get involved in that. I mean, 12. If they were going to invest 12 billion into sustainable fuels, then it's a fair investment, isn't it? It's something's going to happen.
Absolutely right. Any other news, gents?
Well, not any particular news. Just thought I'd give some stats around Team Graves' performance last year. So, I've been talking to Carl. No.
Well, is this kind of so? We've kind of covered the news section, and we're going into 2023. How did it pan out for us?
Yeah.
And looking ahead to this year, so I think we're going to start off with some strong statistics, then, Mr. Harvey.
Yeah, I mean, big fans of Graves Motorsport. A lot of time for the team there, Dave and Carl, and what they've set out to do. But they're obviously getting their literature together, and I won't spoil the surprise for the people whose desks it's likely to land on to try and get them to part with some of their well-earned cash and invest it in brand awareness. But 2023 results, unconfirmed, just based on the bit of paper I've got in front of me, but 47 overall and class wins. 143 overall and class podiums. Third overall in the Porsche Sprint Challenge, thanks to that man in the middle of my picture, and a great debut season with him and his colleague. Third overall in the Mini Challenge JCW, with a driver that was his first year in, and second, third, and fourth overall in the Mini Challenge Trophy, and arguably had every opportunity to win that. So 47 overall and class wins and 143 overall and class podiums. This is a young team that are still finding their way in the motorsport world, and that's the sort of thing that they're putting out. And Max has finished third in a competitive championship that is still growing, but first time out. And they've got this great record of coming into the Mini Challenge, JCW, and now Porsche. And hopefully you tell us about what you're going to do next year, Max. But these are first time out type statistics, and you'd think that they're a massively established, long experienced team. It's still a very small core team with lots and lots of people that get brought in for the race weekends. That, by any measure of success, is outstanding. So
it is.
Chapeau
Absolutely
to the guys at Graves, because that's bloody impressive, frankly.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, you say there's a small core team, so effectively it's Dave, Carl, Sam. Am I right in saying that? So that's three, and Pete. So that's 3 people, 4 people day to day running that team, and then the extra people come in for the race weekends with the spannering, the data, the coaching, and everything like that to assist the drivers. That is absolutely phenomenal, and I tip my hat off to the Core Graves organisation. So let's go to you, Max. As part of that statistic, that very impressive statistic, you pushed your Porsche to third in your rookie season in the Porsche Sprint Challenge. You went back to rear-wheel drive. Talk us through how 2023 went for you.
It was a massive learning curve. I've been around racing for quite a long time. I probably haven't learned so much in a season as that for a very long time. So which means it's great fun. When you're learning, it's fun. And so it was a really, really fun year. I think the highlight would have to be winning at Croft. But I was equally as excited to race a Porsche at Brands. So, the year's been mega. There's plenty of ifs, buts, and maybes and ways we could have won the championship. But I think the fact that we're in the run for it wasn't a bad effort at our first stab, and also in a way, spending considerably less than a lot of our rivals. I think is also worth a note, really. So, we weren't competing on the same budget as others, and that always hinders you. So, very pleased with what we achieved, and I think by the end of the year we were we're in the mix every weekend for podiums and race wins. I think in the wet we were probably the fastest guy, and I'll carry that into what my plans are for 2024. So it was definitely a learning year. Great to be back into a GT car. To be honest, it's just cool driving a car and racing it and seeing a Porsche badge on a carbon steering wheel in front of you. It's bloody cool, really. So I've loved it. So I'm hoping for more of the same this year. Really, that's the aim and that's the plan.
And actually, that series seems. I'm putting things into context of all motorsport here. Actually seems relatively good value for what you're getting.
I think
in terms
it is
of
good value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to change good value to being cheap, and it's definitely not cheap. But I do think it's good value for what you do and what you get. You get a lot of racing time, you get a good amount of track time. The cars are incredible. They're very competitive with one another. They're very reliable. Really, really good support from Porsche. Hospitality is fantastic. It is very, very well run and well organised. And what you get is quality. You when you pick up a Porsche trophy, it's a nice trophy. When you get a bottle of champagne on the podium, it's a nice bottle of champagne. Nothing's done badly. Everything's done well, and you do feel like you get really good value from it. So, yes, it's not cheap. Yes, it costs well in excess of £100,000 to run a year, but so does a lot of other stuff in motorsport. And when you're spending that amount of money, you do get good value back from it. And above all else, the racing's been mega. We've had some proper ding dong battles with people at the front. And that's exactly what you want from your racing. So, yeah, I think the series has been mega. I think it'll go from strength to strength. I really hope it does. There's a new car out this year, which is fantastic. So we've got the same engine as the Carrera Cup car, which is in a slightly smaller, more concise package, if you like, in terms of the car. So, they're going to be bloody rapid this year. They're going to be really, really fast. Not that it weren't fast last year, but it'll definitely be a sight next year with them all launching off at Snetterton in May. So looking forward to hopefully being on that grid.
And you put the value sort of into context. So we're talking about, okay, yeah, Porsche badge, carbon fibre, this and that, everything like that. One of the things that you showed me at Brands Hatch, the gearbox and the engine. So you get a free, as long as they're maintained like they should be and they're serviced like they should be. If the engine or gearbox goes bang, you get a free one. You just get a brand new one.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. So it needs to be maintained as recommended by Porsche, and it needs to not be damaged by the driver. So that means not over-revving it, not changing gear when you're doing, sitting with it in neutral and banging it into gear or something like that, which, to be honest, the car doesn't let you do. So, and there hasn't been anybody this year who's needed a new gearbox or new engine. So it's as much a statement of confidence from Porsche as it is a warranty, because they're in the belief that it's not going to break. Mass spot on, really. That's what you want. So,
but also, Rob, in those numbers that Max was sort of talking about, there is a large element of in-season testing, which is Porsche only days, and that's included within the actual figure. I saw Max up at Donington on the back of a very busy and tiring weekend.
Yeah.
But it was a Porsche exclusive day. The GT3 Cups and the Caymans were there. And this year, obviously, the introduction of the RS that Max is talking about as well is going to make it interesting. So, it's not a small amount of money because there's no small amount of money. But value for money on a very, very well-organised, professional manufactured back race series, I've been very impressed with the very little exposure that I've had. And it's great to hear someone in Max's position thinking, actually, I've worked hard to get this budget together. I've had a good crack at the title first time around, if, whens and maybes. But you've come out of it thinking, I want to do this again if I can. And you've got a lot of positive experiences where you come out of some other series and you just think, I just don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
What's the point?
I mean, that's exactly it. I finished mini challenge at the end of 22 and I didn't really want to come back. I kind of lost the love for doing it. I got frustrated with cars not being competitive against each other and a general lack of reliability. And I think that's two things that Porsche have absolutely nailed with their cars. They are very reliable and competitive across the board is so tight. So I didn't deserve to win the championship this year. I wasn't the best driver, and as a team, we weren't the best team. Joe and Parker were, and certainly in the back half of the season, Joe and Parker were, and in the first half of the season, Steve and Redline were. And at various points we were better than them, but we weren't over the course of a season, and that was because they did a better job. Whether that's because they invested more money or had more experience to start with is out of the question. They did a better job, deserved to win the championship, and that's it. So, you can shake someone's hand at the end of it and go, well done, you done really well, you deserve that, rather than coming out and going, yeah, you did win it, but your car's way faster and it didn't break down because you were a bit lucky. That's the difference is in what you get from the championship, basically.
Yeah, and look, third overall in the first year of Sprint Challenge is, I know you'd want to win everything that you possibly can do because you're a professional driver and that's your expectation, right? But it's not a bad start for you and the team in that category. So well done.
I was going to say, he gave it a bloody good go.
It's good effort,
and just.
I'm so much more experienced now going into this year. So, sorry, Rob. Good. You go.
Winning at Croft. That's got to be the absolute highlight of the year. Although that was around you won but didn't get to celebrate because it was post race. Was that?
Yeah, it was a shame. I kind of knew I'd won it, but I couldn't boot Toby off the podium. So I celebrated it like I'd won because I knew it was coming. It was coming, but it just everybody else didn't get to see me on the top step of the podium. But there was no way it was going to stand. Toby just smashed Joe out of the way, so he was never going to be able to keep the win, to be honest. But it was still a win. I feel like Silverstone, had there not been a safety car and a red flag stoppage, I feel like I'd have won there as well. It was one win, but I feel like it could easily have been more. I feel like there was a few more chances of being on the podium that were very, very close to being podiums. And to be fair, I completely cocked it up at the start of the year by pretty much stalling a car with launch control on the grid at Donington. And if I'd not done that, then I'd have got a lot more points out of that first Donington meeting and probably been in closer contention for winning the championship. It might have put us into a position maybe for second rather than first, but having that additional pressure it'd have changed the whole year. And so it's buts and maybes, but that's the experience I'll take into this year, and that's for both the team and I. So bring on 2024. I think you can probably all guess what I'm wanting to do this year. So
would that be Porsche Sprint Challenge with the bad boy engine in the back?
Yeah, that would be the plan. So there's a small chunk of cash that I need to find prior to doing that, but that's definitely the plan and the aim.
Buying houses is not going to help that mission, Max.
What's that? Sorry.
buying a house is not going to help you find a big chunk of cash down the sofa, that's for sure.
Well, it means I've got a sofa to find cash down the back of, but I can confirm I've checked the sofa and there isn't any there.
Fair enough.
We'll try. So you're 2023, Paul. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time with Gross Motorsport this year. So, I mean, we've also had some days out of Goodwood and stuff as well. So how was your year been, and what's it looking like going into what is now this year, 24?
Yeah, well, 0 races completed, and I don't feel any problem with that actually.
As long as you didn't start anything, that's okay, Paul.
No. None started, none finished. I've renewed my licence just in case, because you never. And the kit's always in the car. So if Max suddenly gets food poisoning and he's paid for his race weekend, I'm ready to go.
I keep tagging you and say it's Super Copers, and you keep telling me to bugger off. So I'm just going to get the hint at that point.
Look, I'll keep getting offered. People want me to buy cars, right? I mean, I'd be interested in a Gem 4, and I'm hoping the Gem 5 series plummets Gem 4 values. This is not what Max wants to hear, by the way, right? Having a couple of covered, but no, it won't. But I don't intend to race or to own a race car. I'm more than happy. Had a bit of track time across different things. So in the winter and early started, chucking it down with rain at Snetterton in one of the Coopers on Motorsport Wets, fastest car on the track by a country mile. Made me feel like a hero driving around the outside of people at Coram. That was all to do with the tyre and the car, nothing to do with me and the fact everyone else was on road tyres or semi-slicks. But it made me feel good for a bit, and then so that was a really enjoyable day out. Obviously, big year for business, and bought the Fault and some other bits and pieces. We've had a good year at work, 16 million of new business coming in there. So take the business, we doubled the size of the business in 3 years now. So, and we're just working on our next 5-year plan. So that's an exciting time on the work front. Managed to finally take the BAC Mono out at Goodwood.
That was a good day, wasn't it?
It was a good day. It was Evo track day, so it didn't feel very Evo, as we said in one of the previous podcasts.
No.
But having the opportunity to drive the Mono was great. I preferred it to have not been in the pouring rain, and it literally, the second I got in the car and pulled out the garage, it absolutely hammered down. Yeah, and we were on like Kumo semi-slicks as well. So but that was just nice to be able to do that and get that out on track for the first time. And we had some laps. Believe it or not, Max, Rob and I managed to fit into a Series 3 Caterham together. It took a bit of time to get us both in and out, but we managed to just about get in there. So some Caterham laps on the same day at Goodwood. Finished the year with a winter track day at Brands Hatch, again in one of the Coopers in the wet. Had some fun with someone else who was in a Puma that we all know, Frank Frostick. Again, in the morning, we were the quickest cars on circuit. In the afternoon, it was very cold. So although it dried out, I was on wet rears and slicks on the front. It was off the racing line was still a bit sketchy. It's a track day. But it was encouraging to know that with my excess weight, not a manufacturer, not a series compliant manifold and exhaust, so a little bit stifled on power. I was about a second a lap off what the guys would have been doing in the Cooper series, right? So I'll take that on a track day, and just it was fine for me. I wasn't prepared to take any more risks than that. I wasn't chasing a lap time, but it was enjoyable. A few other things that happened towards the back end of the year. KAs at Brands. I was on the radio for the second successive year. Managed to get our drivers to roll the car. So one of the drivers in qualification on Saturday night rolled the car at Paddock Hill. That was a doozy. If anyone hasn't seen it, I can point you in the right direction on socials. That was like a 5 or 6 roll effort, which was very, I think it was
very 9.5. It was definitely 9.5 with Pike. It was spectacular. It was impressive.
Yeah. Dave and Sam were absolutely adamant that they wanted to rebuild it overnight. Carl managed to talk them out of that. So we managed to get another vehicle back for the next morning to be able to race in that and qualify it. So that happened. And then the team that I was looking after on headset predominantly is the Almost Racers, Al and Al. We call them Fast Al, well, they call themselves Fast Al and Slow Al. Slow Al was going quicker than Fast Al. So Fast Al was trying to put a time in, but he was in the last hour, dark, wet, cold. And actually at this point, he was only about 4 laps into his stint, which was to finish the race off. We kind of were flitting in the middle of the pack. all of the Graves cars are absolutely bang on in terms of, they're not trying to push the regulations. They're absolutely compliant. And this is not a front running team in terms of driver combination either, but they're competitive racers. And Al, who was fast Al, now slow Al until that gets amended again, managed to roll it at paddock. So he ended up upside down on his roof, literally upside down. The marshal came over and said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yeah, I'm okay." Well, I'm upside down, but I'm okay, and I'm sort of being held in by my crutch at the moment. And then had the kind of the palaver of trying to get out of an upside down car. So the second that he's undone his harness, he's now sort of wedging himself on the dashboard and everything else, so he doesn't sort of land sort of face first into an upside down roof, and then got out the window and everything. So he was fine, very, very safe. That was the main thing. Didn't lose his sense of humour. His colleague, who's now fast Al, normally slow Al, he didn't really have much concern there, but there was a satisfactory smirk on his face when I said, "Well, he's rolled it." So, good, compassionate teammate he wasn't at that moment. I think he enjoyed it temporarily, but everyone was fine. The cars are easily repairable or replaceable at the sort of cost point that they are. But yeah, they went over. And then just a couple of weeks ago, just before Christmas, had a private tour of the McLaren Technology Centre. A friend of mine works there. In fact, two people that I know work there, but one guy's involved. And he said, "Would you like to come have a look around?" So we had unfettered access to the boulevard and the trophy room and the trophy corridor and everything else. It was an unusual mix of cars because obviously Formula One's Formula One, and you expect to see them, and you could see, obviously some of Lando's cars and so obviously some of the classic cars, Hamilton's car, Alonso's car, and still the chrome livery cars are great, but the West cars of Hakkinen and Coulthard were particularly interesting.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, but what they had a couple of days before was actually a road car and GT car function of some sort. So there were far more cars there than would normally be. And back to what we were saying earlier, I mean, I love classic F1. I remember the first time I went to Barcelona and heard a V10 screaming down the straight. It's an unforgettable. In fact, I heard that out on my way to the circuit before you even got there. That's how loud it was. But there was the McLaren F1 GTR Longtail Le Mans car there in the classic livery of the sort of like the Gulf colours, and then there was another one there as well, McLaren F1, which was in the black colour scheme, and of all the cars that were there, including the Formula E car and the Extreme car and everything else, those two F1s and particularly the Longtail was just amazing to have some personal time with, up close. Just sort of taking it all in and just having the opportunity to sit near greatness from my perspective. So thank you to my friend who enabled that to happen. The corridor of trophies is absolutely incredible, including the life-size Lego car that actually works. That's at the end of it as well, which is ridiculous. Weighs more than a real car because of the amount of Lego pieces in it. But yeah, that wasn't a bad way to sign off, and we're going to hit the ground running because we're at Tuesday. What day are we today? Monday, aren't we? I think I've lost track. Monday. On Thursday, I'll be up at Autosport, sort of kicking the season off again. So here we go.
See you there.
That's a good point, actually. Autosport. I was going to kind of save that until the next episode potentially to talk about and debrief from it, because there's a lot of sort of conjecture of, is it going to be any different? There's always been a bit of a decline with Autosport over the years, and it's always been noted as it's never the same as the year before. Just quickly, gents, your thoughts going into Autosport. What are you thinking it's going to be like?
I'm going for 3 days. This is probably the first year that I've gone and not actually been fully associated with a stand. So we'll see whether I end up being there for 3 days or whether I come back early. But certainly the size of the show's gone down over the last couple of years. But I do get a feeling that they're really making a bit of an effort to make it better. Will there be as many stands?
It's whether it pays off, I guess.
That's the bit, really. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, last year was a bit disappointing. From my perspective, last year was a bit disappointing. I'm going back this year anyway. I think it has two sides to it. If you're in motorsport and you want to network and meet other people in motorsport and do the business of motorsport, particularly on the trade days, Thursday, Friday, And if Max wants to either meet sponsors or people want him there, or he's got a product to support, that's one of his, I think, last year case, then there's business that goes on that doesn't necessarily take place within the show, but there are people there doing stuff at this point of the year which is really helpful, or is a thank you for what happened the year before. The general public side, they're going to have to improve in terms of attracting people and stands and everything else. I mean, it was always a great opportunity to go to the big brands and get a discount leading into the series. So if you need a new crash helmet because your one's out of regs, or a suit, or whatever it might be, but people don't tend to shop like that anymore. They'll shop more online. No. It's the same as the high street. So the nature of all of these types of exhibitions is going to change. So, I think that there's two sides to it. There's the business side, and I'm sure business will still get done. It's just whether or not the show side and the big stands and everything else where Demon Tweets used to be there. I don't know if that's ever going to come back in the same way, but they've rebranded it. It's now AS rather than Autosport. They're obviously trying to reposition it, but we had a period of COVID. Hopefully this year it's back to a little bit more popularity and it will build from there.
I mean, my show last year was my most successful show, business and commercially. So for me, last year the show was brilliant, and I think, like you're touching on there's the Autosport show of old used to be the place you went to get your kit at the start of the year, and even if you didn't actually buy it there, is your chance to just go and try everything on, try a helmet on, try a different brand that you've not used before, try suits, work out what size you are when you're new to it all, and that's still what it should be about, that is relatively centrally located for everybody, and it means that everybody's in one place and you can go and try and look around, and that's what the Autosport show to me is all about. So hopefully it has a bit of a resurgence. Anyway, Rob, we've not touched on your 2023. We need to do that.
Well, no, we haven't, have we? It was kind of it was weird. It started off with a couple of decent rounds in the modified Fords, and I'll be going back to that series this year. I've actually managed to put my deposit down for the first 5 rounds. But I started off with some pretty good results in modified Fords, but unfortunately my health kind of took over. I had an issue with gallstones and my gallbladder kept playing up. And it just got to a point where I had a few issues with the car and I wanted to change it to an EcoBoost. I had a few commentary dates lined up and my health wasn't 100%. So I stopped racing for the year, got some advice from the doctor, and he said, look, just take a bit of a break from racing for your own health. I'm still post-cancer, getting checked out and stuff. But what it gave me was the opportunity to do some pretty good commentary dates with the BRSCC. Paul McCurlin, the head of the BRSCC, gave me some extra dates to go alongside my C1 Racing Club commitments. And I covered days at Snetterton in the scorching sun. Great. It was good to see stuff like the Audi TT Cup progress this year. Again, I'll talk about the C1s because it's a great paddock to be a part of. They had some fantastic races this year. The climax of the 24 hours was probably the most hectic 5 minutes of my life, and a bit controversial actually, because it ended in contact. 24-hour races, we talk about how great Le Mans is and stuff like that, but 24-hour race at Silverstone that boils down to contact with 2 laps to go, and the winner of the race changes while we're still live on air. So the cars came in and the winner gets out, the on-the-road winner gets out the car really happy. Yeah, we've won it. We've done the 24 hours. They go over. I start writing my notes and I'm looking around at what's going on, and there's a bit of a tense atmosphere because the car they've made contact with has come in second. And then as I then go, so in the national pits, guys, Max will probably know more than Paul, but the podium upstairs, you kind of walk through the little alleyway to go up the stairs to go to the top podium.
Hang on. Are you insinuating that I've never been up the podium steps at the national pit?
I think I've only done it
I
once.
wasn't insinuating that at all. I was going to say that the Silverstone National Pits, that top balcony sort of podium, isn't used a lot, I don't think, because obviously...
That's a very good guess. I've never been up there, by the way. You're absolutely right. I was just checking that you're being very presumptuous that Max has been up there and I haven't. Thank you.
Well, I don't know, but then thinking about it, where Max would got his results, so you'd have ended up going on the podium on the back of the truck, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so, that's where I've been the majority of the time.
So, Yeah, so I had my paper in my hand with all the runners and riders, and I knew from my earpiece that it was being investigated as I spoke. And just as I went to take steps up to the podium, Charlotte from the BRSCC just put a hand on my shoulder and went, "Rob, wait, it's changed." So then there was another 5 minutes. And while I'm writing all this stuff down, the circuit commentator, who's on a different feed, gets word the results changed. And he walks straight over to the guy on the road and goes, "You've just been given a 3-minute stop-go penalty, retrospective penalty, and that means you've lost the 24 hours. You're off the podium. How do you feel?" And there's a bit of
Wow.
and there's a little bit of raw feeling in the air, and we're all like, "Jesus, what the hell has he done that for?" So anyway, he then does his interview, hands the mic to me, so I can then do the podium interviews for both the live stream and for the circuit. And of course, I get up the top. One team walks away, and we're really quickly trying to get all these teams around, because I think it was Ali Bray's squad had inherited a podium place from fourth place and gone up to third as a result of this penalty for the on the road leader. So, and that was it was a thrilling end to a 24 hours, a little bit controversial, but at the end, both teams shook hands and were like, "You know what, probably a fair cop." It was a bit of a move down the inside into a gap that was always disappearing. But that was certainly one of my highlights on the commentary side. But again, and commentating the last round of the year at Silverstone on the international circuit in the Silverstone wing, and seeing all the MX5 races wrap up, and that's some really great races in those series. I love one make racing, as you guys know. And to see Steve Foden, actually, I'll give Steve Foden a big shout out. He won the Mark 1 MX5 championship after suffering a bit of misfortune at some earlier rounds. And I actually gave him a hug after he won it. The camera cut, went back upstairs for the next race, and I walked up to him. I said, "Look, I need to give you a hug." He was in tears, and it was great to see motorsport behind the scenes and what it means to some of these drivers working their way through. And I'm a big soft teddy bear anyway. So a year predominantly full of commentary. I plan on doing a bit this year. I've obviously also got the job at Silver Lake in between, so spending the last week learning about how the salvage industry works, and it's all very interesting, very different the way things work. And you know, you've got a lot of the YouTube market now of people like Matt Armstrong doing up crash cars and stuff like that, and actually through work meeting the guys at Car Throttle. So we did a bit of work there, and we've got a bit more work coming soon, all to be revealed shortly. So they're going to come down to Silver Lake and do a bit more work with us.
Can I just say a couple of things, Rob? I mean, I don't give out compliments readily or enough.
Okay.
According to my wife, anyway, and many other people that I know. But number one is delighted that your health is back on track. You know, that's really nice to see. But
me too.
Also, you know, I'm sure. But also, you know, the commentary thing is relatively new to you, and you seem to have taken to it to a duck to water. And you know, really enjoy looking and watching without any bias. This is as well. You know, I'd be harsh enough to be your biggest critic, but you know, absolutely full respect. You've thrown yourself into something that you wanted to do and were passionate about, but didn't know if you would be able to do, and you've really taken to it amazingly. So you know, I can see lots more opportunity coming from you there. Obviously, you've got your day job that you need to focus on, and appreciate that, and the other stuff fits around the outside of it. But you know, fair play and well done, and really enjoy listening to you, and I wish you all the success in developing that into something that could potentially become, you know, more than just a hobby at some point in the future. I think it's great, and I really wish you well with it.
Thanks, Arves. And of course, you know, the big highlight of last year is starting this with you guys. So, you know, the Driving Talk podcast is something I know, Max, you were really keen to start a podcast, and it just kind of came together. So long may this continue. I really think going into 2020, into 2024 this year, we're going to get some fantastic guests off. We're still aiming to get David Pittard on. Max has got some fantastic guests ready and waiting in the wings lined up. Paul, you've got the likes of Dale Lomas, Bridge to Gantry. You know, he's lined up. He wants to come on. I've spoken to a fair few people that want to come on and have a chat with us. So 2024, chaps, it's going to be an interesting year. We're going to have some fun.
Yeah, well, I think that was one of the things to come out of Autosport last year, wasn't it? Was this? So you know, we're more or less a year. Was it a year? Was it 2 years? Was it a year?
A year.
Yeah. You know, it's so you know we're pretty much at driving talk's birthday. So we're year on and bring on season 2. I think we'll go from a good start to hopefully a roaring success this year. So that's going to be the plan.
Long may it continue. Well, it certainly doesn't feel like it, but we're an hour and 15 minutes into the first podcast back in 2024. And we certainly haven't ran out of things to talk about yet. But unless there's anything else to add, chaps, I think that's the end of it for the first episode of the year.
No, I mean, from my perspective, obviously, Happy New Year to everyone who's listening. Thank you for everyone who's listened before. And if it's your first time, welcome. Hopefully you tune in again. Congratulations to Max on his P3 in the inaugural Porsche year. And he hasn't even covered anything that he did outside of his own driving with his own teams that he's running and everything else as well. So no doubt we've got lots of content to come from him and what drivers and everything else he's got lined up for this year in the various championships that he's also participating in as a team owner, stroke manager, stroke driver, stroke whatever it might be, and everything in between. So yeah, lots and lots of stuff to cover.
Mechanic.
But, yeah.
Stroke lorry driver.
Stroke lunch maker. All of the above, yeah. So yeah, and for you, Rob, you know, it's great to see that you booked 5 rounds. I've listened to the Eco Boost over the socials that you put on. That sounds a bit of a beast with its side exit. It's also been nice to see you back out on track with just a small matter of about 130 or 140 horsepower more than you had last time you went out in it. So that could be fun.
Yeah, and well, the funny thing is the Mod Fords have actually, so we have a scheme where we stick £100 down of our entry fee as a deposit, and that kind of guarantees our spot and gives the organisers an idea of how many they're expecting. Well, the first round, they filled the grid and they've got 15 reserves that have paid the £100 entry fee. The first 5 rounds, I think, are full with reserves. And they're going to Spain this year, to Navarra. So really looking forward to that. And
are you going?
Yeah, long may it continue. It's going... unfortunately not, because I'm also going on holiday to Greece around that time. So it's unfortunate. I'll catch it next year. I think there's lots of series. This is something for another show. But Circuit de Navarra, I think that's going to be another circuit that's going to feature a lot now that MSV own it and it's up to spec. There'll be a lot of championships from the UK going there. But certainly we won't be hearing the last of Max and what you're up to, Max, because at one point in the next few weeks we're going to sit down with you and actually talk through your whole career, because to put it bluntly, you've seen some shit, man. I mean, you've been there, done that, and got the T-shirt. We want to hear about it.
Been around the houses. So yeah, there's a few stories.
Yeah. Yeah, but we have to do it now, Max, because when you get to my age, you can't remember anything you did in your 20s. So
better do it now. And then,
other than the stuff that you really shouldn't remember, to be fair.
Yeah. Can show everyone, I can't remember what's going on.
Yeah. Treat it like a video time capsule, and you better show it to your grandkids. I told you I could do it.
Plus, now you're 30 plus, you can say, well, back in my day...
all these youngsters coming through, they don't know how good they've got
when I used to wake up without aches and pains. So,
exactly that. Well,
I'm looking forward to some mega episodes this year. I think it's going to be really good.
Well, we'll leave it there, chaps, but we're going to have some fun in 2024. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, give us a 5-star on Spotify if you can, whatever audio broadcaster you're listening to. Give us a big thumbs up or a 5 stars, whatever they prefer. And don't forget, we also have a Driving Talk Podcast YouTube channel. This is the Driving Talk Podcast powered by Icon. We'll be back with you very, very soon.